Hello, everybody, and welcome to our public meeting for May 25th. Would you please join me in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Missoula County acknowledges that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Before calling for public announcements, I want to make one announcement. This is a sad thing to have to say, but I'm going to say it. Last Saturday, a gentleman named Gary Stevens, known to all as Harley, died outside of our building. This man was experiencing homelessness and had been that way for quite a while. Was also known to many who frequented downtown. We want to acknowledge it happened and express our sadness and regret and condolences to the folks that he had touched in his life. With that, do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak to anything you'd like to speak to at all?
Can I pop
We're
in
going
and
to
do
do your
the
proclamation if you want to say it for then. So.
closed captioning?
Oh, I always forget that one. Do you want to speak to closed captioning?
Hello, everyone. If you are joining us for this meeting virtually today, instructions for turning on closed captioning are on your screen. If you're joining us in person today, we will have closed captioning on all the screens here in the Sophie Moise room, and we also have assisted listening devices available. Please come to me if you would like an assisted listening device, and we'll get one for you. We ask that all speakers today please remember to speak slowly and clearly during the meeting. This helps with the accuracy of the closed captioning. There will be multiple chances during the meeting for public comment virtually. During those times, if you like to speak, we ask that you use the raise hand feature. If you're on Microsoft Teams, this is a little small hand button. If you're calling in on the phone, you'll need to hit *5 to raise your hand. Then once called on, you'll need to hit *6 to unmute. If you have any questions or concerns, please find me during the meeting and let me know.
Thanks, Cheryl. So we have a couple proclamations. One of you guys want to?
So this first proclamation is related to National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens aged 19 or under, and it is estimated there are more than 1,100 suicides on college campuses in the United States every year. And whereas gun violence kills 120 Americans every day, 70 women are shot to death by intimate partners in an average month, and in Montana, 228 die and 259 are wounded by guns in an average year, with Montana ranked at 9th in the nation for all gun deaths and 3rd in the nation for most gun suicides per capita. And whereas Montana has been in the top 5 states for highest rates of suicide for the last 40 years, and 62% of firearm deaths in the United States are suicides, with suicide being the #1 preventable death for 10 to 14-year-olds, and LGBTQ youth being 4 times more likely to attempt suicides as their straight peers. And whereas support for the Second Amendment goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people and protecting public safety, and whereas June 2nd, 2023 would have been the 26th birthday of Haida Pendleton, a teenage girl who was shot and killed in a neighborhood park, and we honor the lives and lost human potential of Americans stolen by gun violence on this day. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on Friday, June 2nd, 2023 to help raise awareness about gun violence, encourage responsible gun ownership and storage, to help keep our children safe, and to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands. And now, therefore, we, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners in the city of Missoula and the state of Montana, do hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2023 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
Thanks, Dave. Would you guys like to speak to this?
We cannot hear
Oh,
the commentary.
Roxanne.
Just turn on your
Oh.
mic. Thank
Should I
you,
start
Lauren.
over?
Maybe,
I'm
yeah,
not-
start from the beginning.
Okay, I'm thanking everyone here in attendance for their service. My name is Roxanne Weikel, W-E-I-K-E-L. I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. This is a grassroots, nonpartisan organization that was started by one mom, Shannon Watts, after the Sandy Hooks shootings. There are now 10 million supporters nationwide, 8,000 in Montana, and 2,600 here in Missoula. So we want to thank you for proclaiming Friday, June 2nd as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. As was mentioned, it was started when Hadia Pendleton, a high school student, marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade, and then 1 week later, she was shot and killed on a playground in Chicago. Her friends began wearing orange on her birthday, and the movement has now spread to a national event to honor survivors and victims, and for communities like ours to stand together with everyone who believes we can and must solve the gun violence problem in America. By now, many, if not most of us, have been impacted by gun violence. You may know one of the 228 Montanans who die on average every year, and the many more who are wounded, and the many more who know these people and grieve. We are all aware of the horror of mass shootings and the fear that we have here when a neighborhood or a school like Hellgate is locked down. And our students regularly have lockdown drills, a reminder of the potential risk. So I ask you, does it feel like the problem is getting worse? And the answer is yes, it is. Just in the last year, gun deaths are now the leading cause of death for children and teens. So think about that for a minute. And in Montana, the rate of gun deaths increased 51% over the last 10 years compared to 39% nationwide. Suicides in Montana increased 43% in the last, in the last 10 years compared to 19% nationwide. So we, along with other volunteers here today, representing the 2,600 supporters in Missoula, want to thank you for this proclamation. We also want to let you know that there are about 30 businesses in Missoula right now who are providing information about National Gun Violence Awareness Day in their stores. Special thanks to Rockin' Rudy's for a full-page ad, The Big Dipper for making a special orange ice cream, and many buildings, several buildings around town will be turning on orange lights. So we invite you to join us Friday, June 2nd at 5:30 p.m. at the courthouse lawn for a community gathering to honor victims and survivors and to take action to prevent gun deaths. There will be speakers followed by a walk to the Bearcats Bridge. And finally, in closing, I must say that if you're a gun owner, I want to remind you to be sure you always store your guns unloaded and locked up and with ammunition stored separately. And when your children are going to a friend or grandparent's house, ask to be sure their guns are safely stored. Why? This obviously reduces the risk of a child unintentionally shooting themselves or others. It reduces the risk of suicide, and it's worth noting that 76% of school shooters get their guns from family or friends. So know that it is extremely important to store your guns safely. So thank you again, and we invite you and hope to see some of you on June 2nd at 5:30 p.m. on the courthouse lawn. Thanks again.
Thanks, Roxanne.
You want me to turn it off?
Another proclamation.
Oh, I wasn't sure if anyone else.
Oh, did anybody else would like to speak to this?
Okay. Another proclamation then. Whereas Missoula County and the city of Missoula acknowledges the lasting impacts of the homophobia and transphobia highlighted by acts of physical, mental, emotional, and institutional violence against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and two-spirit, LGBTQIA+ and 2S people and communities both within the United States and internationally. And whereas Missoula County and the city of Missoula have diverse LGBTQIA+ and two-spirit communities, are committed to supporting the safety, visibility, dignity, and quality of all our community members. And on June 24th and 28th, 1969, the New York Police Department conducted a pair of raids on Stonewall Inn, a popular gay bar in Greenwich Village, citing anti-LGBTQIA plus and Two-Spirit legislation, such as masquerade laws to arrest patrons and workers. And whereas these raids sparked national resistance known as the Stonewall Uprising, led by transgender and lesbian activists such as Marsha Payette No Mind Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Storme de la Verre, Miss Major, and many other transgender women of color, and served as a catalyst for the movement toward LGBTQIA plus and Two-Spirit rights and equity. And whereas the courage and bravery of these activists in the face of violence served as a rallying call in the United States for greater movement toward LGBTQIA plus and Two-Spirit rights and equality and equity. And whereas while advancements have been made in regard to policy change and more equitable treatment of LGBTQIA plus and Two-Spirit persons throughout the nation, there continues to be discrimination and violence against people in these communities, making it essential for local governments to collectively take action to support community members who are impacted. And whereas June is celebrated as LGBTQIA plus and Two-Spirit Pride Month nationwide, and whereas all members of our community should be able to live without fear of prejudice, discrimination, and violence and hatred based on gender identity, expression, or sexual orientation. Now, therefore, Missoula County and the City of Missoula do hereby declare the month of June 2023 as LGBTQIA plus and Two-Spirit Pride Month, and invite all citizens to observe this month with programs, ceremonies, and activities in the community, and by visiting www.missoula-pride.com. Thanks.
Thanks, Juan. Anybody like to speak to this? Okay. Do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda? All right, our current claims list, claims received as of May 3rd, 2023 to May 14th, 2023 by the Commissioner's Office. Total $3,469,471.97. We have 5 hearings today. Our first one is on impact fees, and Chris Lounsbury will present.
Thank you, Commissioners. While the presentation comes up here, just as a reminder, you opened a public comment period at the end of April that has been running for the last 4 weeks related to the consideration of impact fees. So a brief history on impact fees and how we got here. So in January of 2021, Missoula County contracted with Tischler Weiss, a consulting firm, to begin work on developing both an internal comprehensive improvement plan for capital improvements, as well as working with the Impact Fee Advisory Board that you created in April of 2021 to look at whether or not Missoula County should consider implementing impact fees across the county for various projects. In addition to that, we contracted with SURF HL here in Missoula to do some public outreach and engagement with stakeholders to better understand the needs and concerns around Missoula County potentially implementing impact fees. So as part of that process, the Impact Fee Advisory Board held multiple meetings and then came up with a series of recommendations that you heard at your public meeting in April. And so I'm just going to briefly go over those recommendations. And so that first recommendation was to hold a public hearing and comment period where the rates were proposed. And so that began at the end of April and continues through today. That you should include a 5% administrative fee as part of the impact fee program to help support the administrative costs of the program. That you should pursue an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Missoula to allow for the collection of certain impact fees inside the city limits. To provide clear communication and education for several months prior to impact fees going into effect. And that proposal came as recommending that you, at the close of your public comment period, not begin collecting impact fees until the end of this calendar year to make sure that the community had ample time to plan for those for future projects. They also recommended that you provide for an annual inflation adjustment based on the annual engineering news record, which specifically looks at construction costs as the method for that. They also recommended an inclusion of a waiver and the setting aside of funds to help waive fees for affordable housing projects. And they gave 2 specific definitions around how the county should consider affordable housing, and that includes permanently affordable housing should be defined consistently and broadly to include deed-restricted dwellings that serve individuals or families earning less than 60% of the area median income, and for projects that meet the definition to make them eligible to apply for federal low-income housing tax credits, and/or projects that contain a component of affordable housing should be considered on a case-by-case basis. And then finally, the Frenchtown Fire District recommended that impact fees be levied in Frenchtown to assist with their capital improvement needs in the future. So the process, as a reminder for how impact fees are adopted, is that you would look at a resolution that would create the impact fee ordinance, which is required by the Montana Code annotated. As part of that, you would incorporate the draft report from Tischler Bice, which outlines the impact fees based on the specific areas of the community where those fees would be spent. The draft resolution is available online today and has been out on the county's website as well as Missoula County Voice since the public comment period opened in April. We had 4 different methods of collecting public comment during this period. So you officially opened the public comment period on April 27th. It's still open today. People were able to email comments to the Board of County Commissioners at bcc@missoulacounty.us. They were able to call your office at area code 406-258-4877. And then we had a Missoula County Voice page specifically where folks could engage and leave public comment as well. So just to summarize the comments that we've received to date, we received 4 comments that were just generally concerned over impact fees and against them, as they were concerned that it would impact and raise the cost of homes in Missoula County. We received 3 specific comments in support of impact fees in general, just believing that they were a good way to help offset some of the property tax burden in Missoula County by making sure that growth helped to pay for its actual costs. In addition to that, you got a letter of support from the Missoula Organization of Realtors, specifically around impact fees. And then you got 1 letter of general support from the Missoula Building and Industrial Association, but they were concerned that on large scale projects, by having impact fees added to potentially the total cost of the project over time with interest rates going up, those could actually have substantial carrying costs. And so they recommended you consider looking if there was a different way other than at the issuance of building permits for impact fees to be collected. And perhaps the model that could be used at their recommendation would be something similar to property taxes. So today what we're recommending is we're asking you to close the public hearing and comment period for impact fees. And at the conclusion of the public comment period, after any you may receive at today's public meeting, you consider whether or not you would be interested in adopting impact fees. And if you are, then we have a recommended motion.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I have things I could say, but before I do that, that's my friends and compatriots. Do you all have any comments or things you'd like to say?
I did have a question, Chris. I think slides on page 7 or 6. Yes, and maybe I just spaced out, but the concern that the Missoula Building Industry Association, they were concerned, but then they had a suggestion, and explain that again.
Yeah, so the suggestion was that we look to see if there was another way to collect impact fees rather than at the issuance of building permits, which is how they are traditionally collected. And their specific suggestion was whether or not, for example, impact fees could be collected at the same time as property taxes and then spread out the cost over a number of years.
It's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
So the short answer is it might be something that would be possible under the existing statute. The challenge is because we are looking at an intergovernmental agreement where the city would be collecting some of these inside the city limits, we would potentially end up with administrative challenges on how we manage the collection of those fees, because the city's program is at issuance of building permit.
So if it was in the county, it'd be pretty straightforward. If it's in the city, we'd have to solve an administrative riddle.
Or would it be
Well,
an administrative nightmare figuring out, I mean, splitting out every time someone is assessed an impact fee over X number of years?
So the challenge would be, and Tyler's not here, so I've not asked this question of the clerk and recorder treasurer, who of course is the one who does tax bills, is how we would look at implementing that and making sure that on the tax bill it was clear to that. The other challenge is, from my perspective, potentially around administration, in addition to what Commissioner Sturmeyer just mentioned, is how do we address then if that home is sold in the first period of time, right? Because it's not a real property tax. And so there would also have to be some mechanism where we would be reporting that to title companies when there was a title inquiry. And so while it seems relatively straightforward to just say kind of treat it the same as you do the way you collect property taxes, there are actually real administrative challenges that would come along with that. Not to mention the fact that we would potentially be running two different programs, or two different methods of collection, one in the county and one in the city, which would be problematic.
Yeah. Well, we could explore this with Tyler a little bit. I wonder if there's a way to not connect these to property taxes, but spread them out over time. If on a house, one house or two houses, it's not that big a deal. If it was a really big project, maybe there's a way to look into how those costs could be spread out over time, independently of property taxes. I'm not sure what that would look like, but.
Yeah, I think that exactly what you're mentioning, Commissioner Slotnick, is the challenge around doing something other than the specified method that's listed in state law, right? Which is at the issuance of building permit.
Right, thanks. So if you guys didn't have anything else, so I just wanted to say that these impact fees speak to this specific economic moment and housing moment that we're in right now.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
I'm getting a sense from council over here that maybe we ought to take public comment.
Oh. Any public comment on impact fees?
You're so sensitive, Strohmeyer.
No. Okay, I'll launch into my rant. And it was so good. It was so good. We're in a very unusual moment here around property taxes and housing. On the one hand, we need a whole lot more houses. One of the reasons our housing is so expensive is because demand far exceeds supply. We have national demand for local supply, and we also see help wanted signs all over the place in downtown for small jobs, and we know folks who are trying to hire people for bigger jobs. It's difficult to find people. One of the reasons it's difficult to find people is there's not enough housing. So we need growth. Other part of this same equation, when a new house is built, the property taxes that the folks pay in that house do not cover 100% of the cost of bringing services to that house. The remainder, the piece of the cost of providing services to the folks in that house that they do not pay, is made up on the backs of all the other existing taxpayers. So on the one hand, we need more housing. And on the other hand, as we grow, it increases property taxes, not because of the value of those new houses, but because we have to bring services to those houses, services that are not entirely carried by those residents. It's a vexing riddle, if I'm describing this clearly to the dozens of you out there. Impact fees address this specific problem, though not entirely. It's a step in the right direction because impact fees allow for new development to cover a portion of the costs of bringing services to those houses. So they aren't borne on the backs of existing property tax payers. This is an effort towards property tax relief. This is not an effort towards new revenue. This is looking specifically at property tax relief. This is a tool that's widely used in other parts of our state, and that's why we're considering it today.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm ready to make a motion. I move that we close the public hearing and consider adopting impact fees.
Looks like there's the motion.
Oh, I'm going to I move to adopt the Missoula County Impact Fee Resolution establishing impact fees in Missoula County, including the recommendations of the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, incorporating the report of Tisha Bice, and directing staff to work with the City of Missoula on an intergovernmental agreement.
Second.
And one other thing to add here, I forgot to say in that first part, I really want to acknowledge that yes, indeed, this will make houses cost more, but That amount that goes up is not very much. And that amount that those houses will go up due to impact fees is spread out over 30 years. And I do not believe that the addition of impact fees will take a house that was once attainable by a person and now make it unattainable. It's a small amount spread out over time, not a big hit. And in that way, yes, it is regressive. This is not a tax, it's a fee. I do want to acknowledge that though.
I just wanted to make it clear, the draft resolution that's part of the agenda packet and available to the public for this meeting, that will not change significantly, but Chris and I will make a few modest changes to it, reflecting today's events, and there's a few provisions from the statute that we have to include in there. And so, but the substance of what you're adopting today is not going to change.
And can we adopt this today and still explore potential for spreading payments out over time that may yield nothing, but may yield something?
Yes, you can do that. I'm not a fan of spreading those payments out over time. You know, you read the statute and it says that you can't collect them any earlier than the time you get a building permit or you hook up to water and sewer or a well and septic. And so the plain language of that suggests you could collect them after one of those things occurs, but I don't think that's the best reading of that statute. I think the intent of that statute is that you collect them at the time of one of those three events. And you know, if you think of it, just what you said, Commissioner Slotnick, about impact fees, they're basically, we're asking new development to sort of catch up, to start at the same place as existing development and pay for what they're going to benefit from that has already been paid from past development. So letting them spread that out over time, you know, I don't know. It wouldn't, I can't say that it would be illegal, but it may sort of undermine the purpose of development fees and what we're trying to accomplish with development fees. But if you know, I'm not saying that if we can't find a solution that we, you know, that would be worth exploring.
Great, thanks.
That's just my legal.
Thanks, John. We had a motion, we had a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, one other question, just to follow up. In the presentation, you mentioned a forthcoming ordinance. Is that?
So this is one of those great confusing areas where resolutions and ordinances overlap. And so it is a resolution that creates the ordinance. There's not a separate document. And so it's unfortunately the ordinance language and resolution language look very, very similar in the Montana Code Annotated, and John can probably explain this better than I can, save for the fact that one has two public hearings and one has one public hearing. And in this case, you've had two public hearings, and the fact that you opened public comment and had a hearing, and the hearing continued for a month. So, and this is your second, for lack of a better term. So, but the top of them both says resolution.
We're going to see that same issue play out later in the agenda when we look at the resolution for no parking on Highway 200 and Speedway. The Montana Code Annotated gives gives counties the authority to pass resolutions regarding parking, but in the sense that those have then, you know, towing, vehicle towing, and consequences in justice court and things like that, we treat them as ordinances. So that's why we're going to have two separate hearings on these no parking. And the statute doesn't say that we have to do it that way, but to be safe, we have the two hearings because they're akin to an ordinance.
Thanks. Yeah, and last little bit on this, I want to say thanks to Chris for shepherding this whole process for more than a year, and to the folks who volunteered to be on the Impact Fee Advisory Board. We had people from the development community, real estate community, folks who are former planners, people who are just generally involved in civic affairs, give a bunch of their time and careful thought to analyzing this really dense subject and diving into the meat of the TISC BICE report and coming up with some solid recommendations. So thanks to all involved. All right, next up, we have a LOLO growth policy amendment from Lauren Ryan.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Lauren Ryan, Planner with Planning Development and Sustainability. The request today is for an amendment to the Lolo Regional Plan Land Use Map and the Missoula County Growth Policy Map. The amendment request is from MCG Vines LLC and is represented by Carl Treadwell with 406 Engineering. The applicant is proposing to amend the land use map designations from public land and open and resource to residential, open space, and commercial, general commercial and community commercial. The subject property is located at 11395 Highway 93 South and is the site of the former Lolo School. The property is unzoned, and the request today is not to zone the property, but to amend the land use designations, which are used to guide development and future growth. Here's the existing site, the Lolo School property. The amendment request involves, let's see, my mouse looks really small on there, I'm sorry, but these two properties with the school located on it, along with this property right to the south, and then to the west there.
Lauren, do you want this?
Oh,
Wait.
I'll be good. Thanks.
Okay.
Unless you guys are good. Okay.
More
great.
clarification.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um,
Actually, she showed this to us before.
Great. So again, the existing land use designations for the property are public land and open and resource designations. I'll get into a little bit more detail on what these encompass in the upcoming slides. This map shows the proposed land use designations. The applicant is proposing 4.21 acres of general commercial, which is shown in this pink color here. 0.39 acres of community commercial, right on the bottom there off of Highway 93 South. 15.73 acres of residential at a density of 16 dwelling units per acre, shown in purple on the screen there. And then 13.42 acres of open space, which is shown in green on this map.
Hey, Lauren, can you remind me what the definition of community commercial is?
Yeah, so community commercial is going to be your more oriented towards like a coffee shop, a kind of local food, whereas your commercial is going to be kind of those bigger type of commercial type uses. And so the community commercial designation was a request of what they heard from public feedback from the Lolo community of kind of wanting a more, more coffee shops, more kind of local places in the Lolo community, recognizing that there is a lot of underutilized commercial space already in the Lolo area. However, the community really wants to see kind of more of those local community commercial type development. And I can.
Yeah, just to run with that point a little bit more. So what's the most intensive example of a community commercial use? I mean, can there be manufacturing? Can there be, I'm seeing a head shake, no.
A boutique tire shop.
Boutique commercial?
Boutique tires.
What a business idea.
Kinder and gentler.
Oh, I'm glad I got a
Um,
laugh out of Karen Hughes in the audience there.
Right.
Is there a square footage or, I mean, any, I guess I'll also leave it at that.
Right. Let me get to the.
My mind goes to worst case scenarios. So-
Really?
Right. And I know that Carl is in the audience as well, so I don't know if he wants to add anything to that question as well, on the community commercial land use designation.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Carl Treadwell with 406 Engineering.
Is your microphone on, Carl?
I turned it on.
Is it green?
It's too low. I just got to lean down.
Yes, it's too low.
I just want to point out that the community commercial mostly, it allows for a hybrid kind of use. So like if you were to see apartments over a coffee shop or something like that, it doesn't strictly require commercial development, but it allows that opportunity for hybrid or one or the other. And so we were trying to keep some flexibility there in case the developer saw some opportunity for commercial development, but also retains the ability to do residential if they don't find any buyers for commercial.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Carl. And I'll add too, yeah, in the application here, so specifically the community commercial allows for, could include retail, financial, business, personal, food and beverage, lodging, residential, and small scale entertainment type facility there.
Thanks, Lon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one more thing that I was going to point on this map again, just for clarity. So again, we're looking at changes to the land use where this kind of darker black border is, not where these other existing residential homes are. So the existing land use designation of the school site is public land. The land use designation is limited to land uses that are public in nature and is applied to areas and structures or uses such as schools, community buildings, and cemeteries. Since the school site is being relocated, the public land designation is no longer appropriate for the area and limits future uses of the area to those that are designated as public. The open and resource designation is located in areas with forestry or agricultural related uses and or floodplains, steep slopes, and natural resource values. So in this situation, the open and resource designation is on areas of steep slope on the property. And a majority of those that are already designated as open space or as open and resource currently will be designated as open space with the proposed amendment. And I quickly just wanted to go over growth policy and regional plans so we're clear on what the applicant is requesting and what we're reviewing. So the request today would amend the Missoula County Growth Policy Land Use Map. A growth policy is a guiding document used to guide future development of a city or county. The document is not a regulatory document, but is used as a legal framework for which future plans and regulations are based on. The growth policy also assists in guiding future infrastructure investments like roads, sewer, water, and trails. The proposal would also amend the Lolo Regional Plan land use designations on the subject property. A regional plan is a land use plan for a geographic region within the county that covers elements of the growth policy at a greater detail. The regional plan is adopted under the statutory authority of the growth policy, so therefore the regional plan must be consistent with the growth policy, and the document establishes the land use designations for the Lolo area. In terms of the review criteria to amend a growth policy or regional plan, they do not have a statutory review criteria or standards like you would see when reviewing a subdivision proposal. However, that amendment must be consistent with the growth policy. So in this case, there is an evaluation of both the Missoula County Growth Policy and Lolo Regional Plan. And both documents have criteria used to evaluate a proposed amendment, and that is how the staff report is outlined. So I won't read through all these, but this is the review criteria for the amendment outlined in the Lolo Regional Plan. So you're looking at if the plan's goals are still valid, there's circumstances where policy is changed. Is there information regarding additional needs of the area? Legal framework has changed, public input suggesting changes, and is the plan still working in terms of public process and planning process? And could the plan better serve the public as well as the landowner? And this is the review criteria in the Missoula County Growth Policy. So we're looking specifically at if it substantially complies with the guiding principles, goals, and objectives of the growth policy, and that the applicable goals and future land uses of the area are addressed in the amendment request, meeting a need that's not otherwise being met. Will it provide substantial public benefit? And if it's in the best means of providing public benefit as well. So this did go to the planning board at the May 16th hearing. The planning board unanimously voted to recommend approval of the amendment with a 9-0 vote. In terms of kind of summary of what the planning board discussed, they did talk about water and sewer and kind of the lack of availability there in the Lolo area and how that would impact this proposal. Additionally, they were in support of the open space recommendation and conserving some of those resources on the property currently. And they were also in support of the community commercial and kind of adding a more mixed use type land use designation to this area. In terms of outreach for the proposal, the applicant's representative did complete a number of public outreach events, which are all outlined in the application packet. They did go to a number of community council meetings and also hosted an open house in the Lolo community. The public feedback from the open house can be summarized into the following. There was concern with preserving the on-site flora and fauna on site, building preservation of the former Lolo school site, the aesthetic of the Highway 93 streetscape, commercial interest, and preservation of open space on site. So in response to the public feedback, the amendment request does preserve a fair number of open space by maximizing the residential density and allowing for some commercial opportunities, including that community commercial that we talked about. We did receive also a letter of support from the Community Council in February of this year. They did emphasize, again, the concern with the water and sewer capacity, the cost of infrastructure improvements, and the potential cost burden on residents for that. We also set up a Missoula County Voice page and ran a legal ad as required by statute. Some of these comments were included in the packet, but we did get some comments later on the Missoula County Voice page. There's some comments regarding that first comment regarding kind of the over commercial and town center as a glorified truck stop. So I don't know if your boutique would fit well there. So basically, yeah, the kind of commercial spaces that aren't being utilized and wanting kind of a more walkable space in the Lolo community. And then that comment there regarding the hillside was in reference to 6 dwelling unit per acre plan, which is outside of the scope of this proposal for clarification there. Comments regarding a park, support of the multi-types of housing there, and concerns just with hillside and preserving the slope, support of a coffee shop. And so with that, staff is recommending approval of both the amendment to the Lolo Regional Plan and the growth policy as well. I've got some recommended motions on the screen and happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
You mentioned a public comment that, a few slides back talking about flora and fauna, but I don't know the fauna of the area, or what was the specific?
Yeah, so that was specifically feedback at the open house. And I do think I have a copy of.
Is there some special critter that uses that area?
Let's see, and this is in the application packet as well. This came from a retiree with a background in wildlife management. They poked around the property and have some pretty photos in the application. Let's see. A waxy spring parsley is on the hillside, and a thin-leaved owl clover.
Yeah, I know owl clover.
You know those? All right,
I'm
I'm
not
not.
them ham and eggs, but I was wondering about the animals.
Oh, animals. Butterflies, bees, and birds.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I was thinking terrestrial. Sorry.
Oh, I
No.
got excited about the plants. So
Okay.
there's the plants on site.
Thank you.
We have motion language.
Sorry, it
It's
was
a public comment. Sorry. public comment on this?
And we do have Carl here with 406 Engineering. If I didn't know
Thanks,
if you
Carl.
wanted to add anything to that.
Like this is quite straightforward, and I wouldn't say that without diminishing all the work that it's taken on both of your professional parts to get to this point. And it makes tons of sense seeing the transition from a school to something else. So I'm excited to see this happen.
Did you want to add anything, Carl?
No, I think Lauren covered it pretty well. The main focus was just preserving as much open space as possible and concentrating development to like already impacted areas. And with community feedback, this was the best we could do. So that's really about it.
Thank you.
Okay, just in time. Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, I think likewise my hope for this site and this is an echo of the first comment that you had on the screen there. I think there's an opportunity for Lolo and kind of the inner core of Lolo to really enhance the sense of sense of community and not just kind of generic commercial sprawl. So to have the opportunity for neighborhood commercial, some mixed use development in there might accomplish a few different goals. So that would be my hope of what this changing land use designations would enable. So I'm ready to make a motion if you are. So I move to adopt the resolution of intent to amend the Lolo regional plan map for the Lolo school property located at 11395 Highway 93 South in Lolo, Montana, from public lands to residential, commercial, and open space land use designations based on the findings of fact and conclusions contained in the staff report.
Second.
All right.
And do you want to the second, or I guess you can do them separately. Sorry.
Any last public comment on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
And I would furthermore move to adopt the resolution of intent to amend the Missoula County Growth Policy Land Use Map, map 18, for the Lolo school property located at 11395 Highway 93 South in Lolo, Montana, based on the findings of fact and conclusions contained in the staff report.
Second.
All right, any comment on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to talk about cannabis zoning with Jenny Dixon. It looks like the part of Jenny Dixon will be played by Karen Hughes today. I know. Yeah.
They could still do a town center concept, maybe. Those public facilities are allowed in most zoning districts or areas in the cases where there's not zoning. I'm Karen Hughes. I'm with Planning Development and Sustainability, and at your May 4th hearing, we continued consideration of a proposal intended to address cannabis dispensary and grow operations through zoning for the area outside the urban area in Missoula County. We continued it because of two reasons to this date. We held open the hearing. One was we were waiting to see if the governor would sign House Bill 128, which would extend the time period for new businesses to start up. They would have been allowed to start up on July 1st, 2023. That's why we were moving this along, to have these new regulations apply to new businesses. Up until now, only existing operations could move from being a dispensary to retail. That date for the new operations, besides the ones that transition from dispensary to retail, that date's been shifted now with the passage of House Bill 128, which was signed by the governor earlier this week. And that's been moved to July 1st, 2025. And the other reason was that there's a lawsuit that's in the Ninth District Court that could affect our energy provisions. So that is where we're at. The regs, as you may remember, talk about dispensary separation and energy requirements. And really, at this point, without the kind of pressure of having new operations starting up, those rules really aren't needed at this point for the rest of the county. And so what we'd probably suggest is you take no action and we just withdraw the proposal at this time, and we can deal with it as needed in some future event. So I don't think you need to take action, just a head nod and we can withdraw.
I can nod my head.
Absolutely. Given that this is kind of moot till 2025, let's just take a break till then. Thanks, Karen. Next up, we have a question around Missoula Rural Fire District petition for annexation. Sam.
Hello, I'm covering for Patrick today. Sam Scott with the Clerk and Recorder. A petition to annex land into the Missoula Rural Fire District has been submitted to our office. The property requested to be annexed is a tract of land located in the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 36, Township 12 North, Range 22 West, as described in Book 944, page 107, located at 21644 Highway 12 West, Lolo 59847. The petition was signed by the property owners who represent more than 40% of the acreage and taxable value, and a notice of hearing has been published twice in the Missoulian. With fire petitions, it's just the one hearing, so it's presented to you for your decision.
Is there anyone who wants to?
Anybody like to speak on this? Do we have any comment from Rural Fire?
They approved the annexation as part of the petition process.
Fantastic.
Oh, is it me? Sorry. I move that we approve the Missoula Rural Fire District petition for annexation as presented.
Second. Any public comment? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Sam. Last up today is Shane Stack to talk about a no parking resolution on Highway 200.
All right, good afternoon, commissioners. Yeah, we are here to just open a public hearing regarding the proposal for a no parking resolution along Highway 200 and a short segment of Speedway. And maybe I'll share my screen and kind of show a quick drawing of what that would look like for the exhibit. So can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the no parking restriction would begin at Brickyard Hill, at Brickyard Lane on Brickyard Hill along Highway 200. And this is just east of East Missoula. And it would extend along Highway 200 to the intersection with Lurch Lane. There would be no parking on both sides of Highway 200. The portion of Speedway that would also have restrictions on parking is the county segment that basically is kind of wedged in between State Highway 200 and the city's portion of Speedway. So basically from Buttercup Lane up to Highway 200 is a very short segment, but that's the kind of the county portion. The reason why we are proposing this is that there's currently a 67 space parking lot that is being constructed right along Highway 200 in the vicinity of the existing Cheyron River access site. And so what we are experiencing are vehicles parking along Highway 200, accessing the river. With the creation of this parking lot and the creation of the path that would lead to the Cheyron River access site, the need for folks to park along the highway, for the most part, will no longer exist. And just to share that site with you, the parking is going to be in this area here that you can see my cursor. So that's kind of the description in a nutshell. I don't know if you have questions.
I'm embarrassed, but I should know this because we've been talking about this for so long, but is there direct access from the parking lot to the river? Okay,
Yes.
I got confused when you were saying like to Sharon.
Trail right there.
Yep.
Ah, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, there's gonna be
Not for
and there-
boats and trailers.
Correct, but for an inner tube.
Humans and tubes.
Yep.
for pedestrians to get down. And this parking lot is scheduled to be completed by June 15th. I was out visiting with the contractor yesterday. They're planning right now to be done by June 12th. So they're on schedule.
Ribbon
That's
cutting in the
amazing.
future.
We're still gonna do a commissioner float.
I'm
Like-
excited. I think we should.
Yes.
Would you like to join us on the commissioner float, Bert? Bert says yes.
Okay.
Bert, do you want to speak to this?
Hi, Bert Caldwell from Bonner. Only question I've got is the parking lot looks a little small to me considering the number of cars I've seen parked along both sides of the road. Has anybody done over time counts of cars parked on Brickyard Hill and up 200 versus the size of the, what did you say, 67 parking spots? And potential growth over the next 2 to 5 years?
So Bert, when we developed this, we didn't do counts. What we tried to do is maximize the space that we had available. Let me share my screen again just to kind of help tell that story.
I'm familiar with the space, so.
Okay. Yeah, so Bert, yeah, we were limited with the space, so we just tried to maximize that area as much as possible.
All right, then my question is it rational to completely block off parking as much as I want it blocked off? Is it rational to block it off if you don't have a place for all those cars to go? All of those cars, not just some of them.
Dave.
Yes, I think it is absolutely rational. I don't want to be too flippant here, but it's like get like the Von Trapp family and start hiking. I mean, there are more safe places farther away from this lot that folks could park at. This particular area along Highway 200 here is particularly dangerous for parked vehicles. And what it will mean is folks are just going to have to park at some distance in a more safe location than along here.
Yeah.
and get themselves to here or do something else for their plans. And there is also a transit option, and that's called Mountain Line in the community for all those folks listening out there. And there are facilities that will be incorporated into
Bus
this.
stop.
A bus stop specifically. So I think that is another way to mitigate this, is that for those who would otherwise like to park, who might not be able to and might find a full parking lot there, transit is a great option.
You left out the free bus from the university.
Oh, that's a great one. Thanks
Okay.
for that.
We got that. Hopefully that will continue. We'll have Mountain Line and the Missoula Yacht Club, which is a paid for private service, but all of those will get a person out here.
Okay.
And now with Milltown, this is not the only site that'll get you on the river where there's good parking and services. So, and I agree, I don't believe we're going to see instantaneous adoption. It will take some enforcement and some education and maybe people rerouting their behavior.
Right.
Cultural change takes a little bit of time, and this is a necessary step.
And neither the buses go to Milltown State Park yet.
No, there will be a bus stop in this parking lot
Yeah.
for Mountain Line.
You're
He's
talking
just
about
clarifying about
the
Milltown.
other vehicles that no longer can park on the highway going somewhere. Milltown State Park would be a good place if you could get Mountain Line to make a stop there.
Yes.
And I've been working with University Bus System before Jordan decided to do something else. But we were looking at them stopping at Milltown State Park too.
I hope we can make that happen this summer.
And
Hope
John,
so.
You had your hand up. Oh,
I gotta think that's gonna be a convenient option for people. I mean,
Yeah.
then you don't have to do the car shuttle.
Yeah,
You take the
exactly.
bus.
No shuttle.
And you take out, you know, at Karis Park or wherever,
Done.
and there's your car and you're done.
Yeah.
The only issue with the bus is air tubes, and there's no place out there to air them up, okay? And multiple people that come in cars all bring their own tubes. So, you know, a pickup truck with 5 or 6 tubes is gonna fill a bus. Just,
Shane, do you know about an air station at this, at the,
There's
parking lot.
no air. Yeah, there's no air station, Josh.
Oh, I thought there was an air station. Is there an air station at Sharon?
no,
I don't think so, Juan.
Oh, made that up. Okay.
that's
maybe,
all I had. Thanks for the time.
thanks, Bert.
Thank you.
I think the other thing I was gonna add is we're just opening the hearing for this. We do have another meeting scheduled on June 8th, to close the hearing.
Thanks, Shane. So, well, we got to officially open, have we officially opened the hearing? Do we have to pass a?
You just did.
We just did? Okay, hearing's open. Thanks, Bert.
Thanks, Bert.
Shane, is there a place for people to comment on the Missoula Voice page about this?
Yeah, they are able to comment on Missoula Voice. We've had one comment so far. In the concern is that on a hot day, the parking lot's going to fill up. Kind of the same thing that Bert said is, I want to be able to park on Highway 200 still, even if the parking lot's full. So I think, you know, the reason why we designed and are constructing this parking lot is to try to get people off of Highway 200. And I think it kind of defeats the purpose of the concerns that were there regarding safety if we build a parking lot and then continue to allow
Yep.
folks to park in a
Absolutely.
hazardous location.
Yes.
Completely agree.
Thanks for all your work on this, Shane. I know it's been multiple years worth of effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Shane.
Thank you. Thanks for the funding.
Yeah. All right, I think if we're done with Highway 200, I believe we are done today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.